All right. Well, I think, yeah, good morning, everyone. I think our topic for this week is to try to have some understanding or just shared information on the ballot questions that'll be on the November ballot. There are 4 provided by the state, and then we've got the CPA one for Natick as well, which Martin reminded me. Unfortunately, I misnamed in my email reminder, so sorry about that. It's question 5 is the CPA one, but maybe if I share my screen, I can bring up the state site that lists the questions, at least just to get a reminder of kind of what they are. I can figure out. Oh, here we go. I think it's this one. Do folks see that 2022 information for voters? Yep. Got the questions 1 through 4 on the right. Yeah. And question one is currently showing.
Then this is the up-to-date one, because the red one that they mailed us like a month and a half ago or whatever does not have question 4 because that was certified late.
Right. Yeah.
That's fairly useless. I was very unhappy that they put it out prematurely.
This text is probably.
I think they're required. I think they have a deadline requirement, and I think that they had to. I actually think question 4 came out after the deadline.
Mute Laura, Martin.
I don't know. Maybe we should mute everybody because I don't know where this where the noise is coming from.
I think it was
why doesn't everybody mute themselves? I'll make sure everybody's muted because I'm not sure exactly what.
And then Brindley was in the middle of a comment.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I think that there's a deadline. It's a really pretty early deadline. I've always been confused by that. I think they had to mail out that mailer before 4 was actually really a part of it. And so there was no, I think they didn't have any choice in that.
I think you're right.
I wish the date was later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, and this website is good to know about then. It's, I mean, it's just like if you just Google November ballot or something, you'll get to it pretty quick. It's got a lot of information other than these questions as well. But in any event, the first question is this: what I guess it's being called the millionaire's tax. The general idea is to assess an additional tax on income over $1 million. Figuring those people must be able to afford it, right? And we could use it for lots of good things. So this is free form. We haven't done this kind of a session before, but basically just interested in any discussion of either questions people have about what does it actually mean, or pro or con.
And I think for me, at least, the pro and con discussion can be really useful because these ballot questions, the way they're worded, is often really confusing. Shall we approve the denial of the reversal of the absence of the positive services? And you're like, what? So sometimes it's hard to even know what it would do if you voted for it, let alone whether you're in favor of it or not. So I think this commentary can be super helpful, both in sorting it out and in coming up with, okay, so if this is actually what it means, here's a consequence of it that could happen that you might not have thought of. So,
anybody care to offer any initial thoughts about it? I've got 1 or 2, but I don't want to hog the conversation yet.
Oh, well, I'm happy to say this one. I have to say on this one, I feel like I'm 95.
95. You cut out. Where is she? Did she actually drop off?
yeah, that was a funny one.
Her mic is still on.
Yeah. Brindley, are you still there?
Yeah. Can you not hear me?
Yeah, you said you were 95 and we heard nothing more.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I think I'm about 95% yes. I feel like once again we've gotten a little bit of this one wrong. I've been listening to what they say on the debates about it on NPR and on Channel 5 has done them, and I think it's a really good thing. I am a little bit concerned about the property sales part. That I wish I understood it just a little bit better. I do think that I do have concerns about that, just that part of it. The rest of it I think is great, but I do have concerns about that part of it. Does anybody have any thoughts about the property?
My understanding of the property sales is similar to the, like the small business sales or retiree sales, that if you're making for one time in your life a significant transaction, like
Right.
selling your home to downsize or selling your business that you've been running or whatever,
Yes.
you were really counting on every penny of that as your retirement nest egg.
Right.
So, and yeah, to me, that is a big concern. I'm wholeheartedly on the idea that in general, folks that make this kind of money every year in, year out should be able to cough up more. But I would love to see some fix for the for kind of a one-time exclusion.
This article needs an amendment, definitely. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned much, in addition to selling a business or a home, anybody over whatever it is gone from their IRAs, the required minimum distribution.
Barry, unfortunately, you're cutting in and out a little bit.
Yeah, can you maybe try to restate it? We're having a hard time hearing you.
I don't know what to do about it.
You seem to be moving relative on the screen. I don't know, maybe if you are steadier relative to where the mic is or something.
My iPad, so.
Yeah.
Is any better speaking louder?
That's better.
Okay. Retirees over the age of whatever it is, 70, have to take required minimum distribution for IRA. So if you sell a business or if you sell a home, you have to add in your IRA. That helps push you over that 1 year when you're selling the business, whatever it is you're doing. I'm voting against this because it needs to be modified to exclude these one-time incomes for older people.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought as well. Carrie, you've got your hand up. I see.
Yeah, I just happened to see one of those commercials this morning, watching the news about the farmer who was talking about, what it would cost him if he sold his farm. But in the summary, it states age may increase, or is it? It refers specifically to income tax. If you sell a piece of real estate, isn't that a capital gains tax? And would that be excluded?
So I believe capital gains are included in ordinary income in Massachusetts. So that is
So
included.
it's like it's a
It
security.
seems a little unfair that it's all in 1 year because you'd think capital gains could be spread out, but that's the way.
Yeah, I got the impression from listening to the debates I've been listening to that if somebody with a large piece of property, a farm or something else decides to sell, it will count. It will count.
So that actually, I think, thinking about it, that's a good thing because the farms that we've had sold in Natick have obviously been sold, turn farmland into housing developments, and I can't really look at that as a good thing and something we want to encourage. And basically, they didn't earn this. A lot of these people did not earn the farms; they inherited them, and if they want to just turn them into cash, I think it's fair to pay for it. But as far as the houses, I did read a little bit about that last night, and there's apparently what is it, 500,000 exemption for the sale of a house. So basically, it would only apply to people who sold their house not for 1.5 million capital gains. So it would have to be sold 1.5 million plus what you paid for it. And that in Natick, that is very, very rare. It probably is pretty common in Dover and Weston, but it's certainly very rare if it occurs at all in Natick. And then you're only paying the surtax on the amount over 1.5 million. So you're paying the normal price for the first 1.5 million. I don't think it applies to practically anybody here in Natick, and certainly not anybody in the state that is in any income or financial straits. For small businesses, I'm not so sure about that one. I don't know how many people that would apply to, but
Martin, it's hard. There was some interference when you were speaking, and I didn't hear what. Could you run that by again? What you just
yeah,
said?
I don't know. We're all having audio problems today. I don't know what's going on, but I'll try to get closer to the microphone and talk louder. Is that better?
No, it was something. Maybe you were. It was like background noise. Or
Yeah, there's
something.
like a little echoey thing.
Yeah, a
going on.
lot of people are still unmuted, or maybe people should try meeting again. So yeah, I read that there is a 500 for married couples, a $500,000 exemption for house sales. So basically, I guess you only pay property tax on the everything over $100,000 in gains, not in sale, but in total in capital gains, and then you only pay the surtax on everything over $1 million of that. So you're ending up, you're gonna have to sell the house for way over $1.5 million to get even qualified for this extra taxation.
This screen I'm sharing now, I think Deb Marion, some Coffee with a Purpose member sent this to me, kind of supporting your argument, Martin, that most home sales would not be affected by this kind of
Actually, yeah, that's
detailed data to go through. But if you were to
look at that list of towns, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
We'll scroll down slightly. There's a list of towns.
Here we go.
They're way down the list, I believe.
Oh, this is not alphabet. Oh, it's
No,
ordered
it's an
by
in order of wealth, basically.
yeah. Not seeing
We
us.
were there somewhere, but not very high up.
Yeah. I'll put the link to this article in our chat for anybody that is interested.
While he's looking at just somewhat of a leap ahead to a later article, but this idea, Martin, of farmland becoming giant housing developments, I could not agree more. I think it's heartbreaking to lose our farms, but honestly, I mean, I know of one large development in this town that the owner did try very hard to sell it for conservation land, and it was during an economic downturn time and money wasn't available, and developers eventually came knocking with money. And so, that's another discussion, but it is just a thing of everything being all interrelated here, that it's, nothing is easy.
You must have missed it, but
I thought it was go down into the 0.5% range. I think it was down there somewhere. But anyway, it's I don't know.
it doesn't seem to break between 1 and 0. But anyway,
We're on there somewhere, but it's
yeah.
it's not a large percentage of house sales.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah, Pat.
If most people sell their houses, I would assume they're not like all the mortgages all totally paid for. I mean, so their actual sale and what they get out of their house is not general. You'd have to sell a pretty big house get $1 million profit out of it, wouldn't you? I mean, that's what I would think.
Yeah,
most people are pretty leveraged up and they're just selling to I don't know.
Yeah, that's the point of that article and what Martin is saying. But Bill, you had your hand up.
Yeah, we've got 5 of these things. This one I understand thoroughly. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote, but I understand it. Could we move on, because we're wasting a lot of time here. I'm really curious about the other questions, so that's my plea.
That sounds reasonable to me. I mean, it does seem clear what the issues are, and it's really kind of how you feel about kind of these one-time exemptions, I think. Sure, let's move to the second question, which I guess I'll share my screen again and find that. Which one was it? Oh, it's this one, I believe. Okay, question 2. Yeah, regulation of dental insurance. I'm not sure I understand this one. Is there anybody out there who would like to say what they think it means? Because this summary of what it is fairly lengthy.
I can tell you what I think.
Sure.
I've been studying this one. So in Massachusetts, we have a law for regular medical insurance that says so much of the dollar has to be spent towards insurance as opposed to admin. It's like 88% or 78%. It's really high. I can't remember the exact number, but that is not included dental insurance. So right now in Massachusetts, we can, the dental insurance companies can spend however much of the money you pay them on whatever they want as opposed to actual costs. And this law is to bring it more into accordance with the regular medical insurance, so that they will be required to spend much more of the dollar on actual insurance payments as opposed to admin and other. And I can say I have many, it's kind of weird, I didn't realize this until recently. I have a lot of friends in the dental world. And they have all pretty much convinced me that this is absolutely needs to be a yes for all of us, because if you'll notice in the ads, all of the ads against you are all insurance companies. There's no other, it's all insurance companies, and it's because they're going to lose some of their profits. They won't actually be able to raise prices that much more because their prices are already really, really high. So the ads that say you're going to pay this much more in dental insurance is really not true. They'll just start losing customers because dental insurance is not always covered by everyone's insurance. So it's usually a supplement and something that you pay extra for most people in this state. Anyway, that is the case. Some people work for companies that include it, and I think even those big companies would prefer that.
Laura, I'm just going to put you on mute. There was some background, but unmute if you'd like to speak. Thank you, Brinley. Yeah, this against argument is saying, I mean, it would seem like a no-brainer from the way you describe it, except if it's going to increase premium costs significantly. You said that couldn't happen. Did I understand you right or no?
My understanding from everybody in the dental insurance is that is fear. When the insurance companies say that, it's fear mongering, because this doesn't really, all this is doing is requiring them to spend more of what they're receiving on insurance, on actually paying out, as opposed to on admins and CEOs and advertising and all of the others. We already have that for all other insurance, for all their medical insurance in our state. We already have this much of each dollar has to be spent towards towards paying off people's bills, and the dental has just been falling on the wayside for that. And so it's really just putting it in line with the rest of all of the insurance in the state.
It's interesting reading the argument against that's on the screen here, particularly relative to what you just said, the second paragraph. There is no law like this ballot question anywhere in the nation. As in, we've never done anything like this, except in the medical industry. I don't know.
Well, maybe in other states, dental is it possible that dental is bound in with other insurance, and therefore this is apples and oranges? I don't know, but it's kind of like my old professor said in grad school about paper companies squawking about regulation. Is like, oh, we'll leave the state if you regulate us. He's like, where are they gonna go? The trees are there. And this strikes me as the same kind of thing of like, people, you're not gonna lose everybody. I don't know. It strikes me as kind of a straw argument.
Do dental insurance companies have to get approval by the state for premium or rate increases? Like utilities do and medical insurance does?
That is a great question. I haven't asked.
No, I know they do for car insurance.
Yeah.
But I don't know about dental insurance.
I did pull out my pages. It is 83 cents on this one. It will be 83 cents of every dollar.
Right.
It has to go to individuals and payments, and not as much more in line. I think our medical one in the state is, I think, like 88 cents of every dollar,
Mhm.
somewhere around there.
Yeah. Other discussion or commentary? Do people feel like they understand it? What it is? Okay. Bill, did you want to say something? You were on mute. No.
Just wanted to say move on.
Move on. Okay. Which
No,
question in particular?
this-
Thank you,
This
Ridley,
is
for your.
Tom. This is
Thank
you,
Tom. I
Ridley.
got,
Yeah,
hello,
Tom.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Yes. It appears the way this is written, they can up it any little way their heart desires.
Yeah, that gets,
Yeah. And, yeah, maybe they'll lose customers, but maybe they won't. But that doesn't seem to be any cap on what they could increase to cover, say they're making, 25% of the, and so now they're requiring 83, so they can up it. But if they up it, they may lose customers, but that's their call. But there
Well-
doesn't seem to be anything in here to prevent them from upping it to anything they want.
there is this sentence here, the commissioner would be required to disapprove any proposed changes to base rates that are excessive, inadequate, or unreasonable in relation to the benefits charged. Maybe that
Yes,
addresses it.
It sounds like there is some regulatory overview of whether it's reasonable.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Hmm.
Then I take it back. Thank you.
No, it's the
That's good-
concern.
Good question, Tom.
Yeah, let's move on, and then we can always, circle back to any of these. Question 3, this is the one that's most confusing for me, certainly. So I'm hoping somebody understands what the heck it means. Expanded availability of licenses for the sale of alcoholic beverages. Honestly, I've tried reading summaries of this and I don't get it. Would anybody propose to explain what we think this is doing?
Kelly Crossley on Under the Radar had a whole program about this last night that I would encourage people to listen to. It's probably online or it'll be rebroadcast. It is, I think, at least once during the week. And I came out that I'm going to vote for this. It's essentially those small liquor store people are the ones that are putting this forward as a way of sort of putting something out there for the time being to prevent big box stores or big retail liquor stores coming into Massachusetts and taking over, so to speak. So they're slightly increasing the availability of licenses. And they've put restrictions on the sale, the way you can't walk through a Target with your bottle of gin and use the self-checkout. They've put in some stuff like that. They've also changed there was a woman, she had 2 guests, and one of them had just moved to Massachusetts and had fixed dinner, and she had a Delaware driver's license, and they didn't accept it when she went to get a bottle of wine to go with her dinner. So that's going away. That's pretty much my.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm going to vote for it.
Those 2 pieces about not self-checkout and accepting out-of-state licenses, those seemed like good ideas that I understood. But the increase in the count of licenses, why would that prevent big box stores from taking over?
It's a compromise. There was something about, I forget how many years ago in the referendum, about 10 years ago or so, that would have removed the limits altogether. So the big chain stores, grocery stores, and even convenience stores could have unlimited. And this puts the limit at 18, I believe, something like that. So it does have less of the limit. So it would have less impact, but also it is only beer and wine, so that so that the full alcohol would still kind of remain. There'd be, some of them could have it, a few, but that would actually lower the limit, how many of the chain stores could have full alcohol. So that would still remain pretty exclusive in the regular liquor stores. So it's basically a compromise. So I think the small liquor stores have gone for this so that they don't get anything worse coming up in the future, like the proposal last time. So I think it seems to me to be a pretty good compromise.
Could I weigh in on this for a minute?
Sure, yeah.
I've done a lot of research on, well, I used to own a liquor store, as some of you know, or a wine store. And I did a lot of research on this for the select board with regard to upcoming warrant article and removing seat requirements. So voting for or against this isn't going to change much, and I'll tell you why. Since Total Wine came into the state, and Wegmans and some of the larger grocery stores offer alcohol, they're able to buy alcohol at 100 case limits. So they get the deepest discounts, and they offer the cheapest liquor in the state. So what small stores have done, mine didn't, because I don't have a big family with licenses. It was just mine. What they've done is they've banded together in getting their licenses. So there's one person who lives in Norwood, I believe, and I'm not going to mention names because it's all industry gossip, but he has 67 licenses through extended, and it's the only way he can buy alcohol to compete with Total and with Wegmans, et cetera. So you have all these informal buying groups that are family related. And it's not going to change a lot, but what it will do is, so the larger stores really can't do that. They can't control moving alcohol from store to store. So right now, when you have a license, you can only buy alcohol for that one license, that one store. You cannot move it from place to place. It's very strictly regulated. And it was a way to kind of protect small stores. But what it's done is, when you sell a license with 68,000 square feet to a store, you put the small stores at a disadvantage because they can't store all the alcohol there. They buy 100 cases, they have to store it on. So I'm voting yes for this. It's not going to change a lot. The other thing about the out-of-state IDs, we have a huge student population here. And as a store owner, if I sold to someone with an out-of-state ID and that person was a minor, because you can buy hologrammed fake IDs on the internet very easily. My insurance had an exemption that would not cover me for liability. So that part of the bill is really important for stores.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Can I just butt in?
Yeah, well, Bill had his hand up as well.
Oh,
I
sorry,
just
that's
wanted to give him a
it.
chance. Yeah.
Yeah, my question is, these big stores like Whole Foods and Target, are they limited to the 7 locations? They can have these big liquor outfits? I would think they offer it everywhere. I don't understand that piece. Anybody have any help?
I can actually answer that.
Okay.
They used to not be able to operate anywhere. My husband worked for Whole Foods for a long time, and that was when they were opening and closing stores. At the beginning, it was only 3 stores per business, and so that's why half of, or more than half of, the Whole Foods stores didn't sell wine. I believe that they are subject to that same number. Yes.
Thank you.
Catherine, did you want to add anything to that? Or oh, okay, that's fine. Yep. Martin?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to interrupt to suggest that we talked about town meeting articles last time, but not all of them. And while we have this great opportunity with Catherine here, maybe at the end she can talk about Article 18 at town meeting, because that's the one that expands liquor licenses in town.
Sure.
To know about that.
Yep.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, why don't we get through the rest of the ballot questions and then circle back to that if that's okay. Any other discussion at this point on question 3? Not seeing any hands or anything, so move on to question 4. Eligibility for driver's licenses. Anybody want to state a summary of what this one is doing?
Well, I won't, but I would just prelude it. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that it's worded kind of backwards. So that a yes vote would keep the current law and a change would be a no. So be conscious of that. And then I'm not going to venture to say. what
An
it does.
example of what you were talking about, Sarah.
Exactly. This is so frustrating and seems amazingly common with ballot questions for it to be, we were all taught in school, to limit the use of really confusing language of, the negative, double negatives and what have you, but ballot questions seem to do it a lot.
So is the sense here that we essentially already have this provision, but this ballot question is asking whether we want to keep it or not?
I think
No,
so.
no, whether we want to remove it.
Okay, well, yeah, right. So a yes,
Yeah, but
vote-
yeah,
a yes
no,
vote would
yeah.
remove it.
Right.
And the it is the ability for
Or undocumented
undocumented
folks.
folks to obtain a Massachusetts driver's license. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm lost.
Yeah.
exactly.
So apparently, right now, the way the law stands, undocumented folks can get a driver's license.
They can?
Which is pretty recent, I think. I think that was enacted by the legislature not that long ago.
Oh.
I
okay.
don't know exactly when, but it's not something we've had for years and years.
Yeah. And so this would take that away, I guess. Right? Whereas it's a yes vote, yeah, would keep in place the law, which allows Massachusetts residents who cannot provide proof of lawful residence, undocumented, to obtain a driver's license. A no vote would take that
Oh
away.
my God, no, I got it backwards. I told everybody to try to keep it straight and I got it backwards. Okay. I better write this down.
Yeah, I think I can say I'm a yes on this one. It seems to me like when you get all of the state police and all of the law enforcement saying this is a good thing to keep, that I'm going to agree with them on that one. They all seem to think that it's better to have people know the laws and the rules than it is to have them driving because they're going to drive anyway. Seems to be the argument I keep hearing. My understanding is that this passed through the legislature and then Charlie Baker vetoed it, or not vetoed it, but said no. And that's why we're where we are now, because people wanted to take that side. And they think, I know listening to Secretary of State Galvin, he said that one of the biggest arguments that people are trying to say is that this will, by giving undocumented people driver's licenses, that they will increase voter fraud. And he said we already have quite significant measures in place, rules in place to prevent that. And he doesn't think that providing licenses will change voter fraud at all.
Yeah. Governor Baker is referenced in this argument against and here. Deb Mitchell has also put into the chat that there's a letter circulating, I'm not sure where, for Natick to become a sanctuary town, which you could say would be related to this in as much as it relates to whether our community is, an attractive place for undocumented folks.
Well, in terms of, I think in particular, it gets at this voter question of, if there's a higher percentage of undocumented people, does that increase the percentage of voter fraud? And it sounds like what the Secretary of State is saying is no, but
so now that we know what it is going to do, or what the yes and what the no means, Brindley was speaking in favor of it. Is there, in kind of characterizing what the no arguments are, is there anybody else that wants to weigh in one side or the other? You feel we understand this one at this point?
I still have a question about why Governor Baker had a chance to veto a bill. What was the bill and what was it supposedly doing? And how did it get to him in the first place? Does anyone understand that?
Well, doesn't he generally approve or veto all bills, just like the president?
How did the bill pass? If
Oh.
the bill would restrict, would be the equivalent of a no vote.
I think the
I don't
legislature
understand.
overrode his veto and passed the bill.
I think you're right.
Correct. That is what happened.
Thank you.
The legislative really wanted this, that, like I said, that it really does seem like all of the people driving on the roads and trying to keep us safe on the roads, state police, all the patrol people, they really support this bill. They do think that it's going to be much better to have people have a license than not have a license.
Okay, so it
I think
sounds
it's a
like
2022 law. There was a lot of discussion about it earlier this year, like late spring, early summer.
so it sounds like it's a bill that would restrict the movements of immigrants, is what it sounds like. That
It's,
kind of a conservative approach.
are
That's
we-
my point. I see clearly that one had, according to the bill, that is negated by Baker, that it's sharing citizenship information. The people that we're talking about are not citizens, from how I read this. This is giving the right, according to all the laws of driver, to anyone who applies and passes all the protocols that are required to get a driver's license. Am I right?
Yes, yeah, basically. you're
Sounds-
right.
So what are they giving as their citizenship information or address or anything?
So are we talking about Sanctuary Town? I'm sorry, I had to run away from my desk to get a,
No,
No,
That's
we're still
Driver.
really just talking about this question 4, and
okay.
Laura, is your question, what information is an undocumented immigrant going to give
Exactly.
to be granted a license?
Exactly. Yes, that's my question. Yep. Seems very open-ended here in terms of, I mean, I would say, yes, they should have a legal way of driving, but what are the criteria that they will have to satisfy?
There
And
was something that I heard on GBH or BUR last week. There's an independent report that came out, I guess, last week or the week before. And buried in there is a statement that said that it's conceivable that the feds could figure out who these undocumented people were from the record by virtue of them, through the computer system, the documentation that people provide to get a license.
that's my question. What do they have to provide?
yeah,
Yeah, right. So I'm assuming that you have to, I don't know. I don't really know.
Me
the
neither.
answer, but that report might make, if we figured out where that report is, it might explain the process.
and there are some things where, evidence you provide of where you live is like your utility bill or a pay stub that has your address printed on it, or I assume that's what they're talking about, but I don't know.
Well, it says in the summary that it's you have to prove identity and date of birth, and you have to produce at least 2 documents from one of each of the following categories: a valid unexpired foreign passport, or a valid unexpired consular identification document, and a valid unexpired driver's license from any United States state or territory, an original or certified copy of a birth certificate, a valid unexpired foreign national identification card, a valid unexpired foreign driver's license, or a marriage certificate or divorce decree issued by any state or territory of the United States. I think that what happens here is that the difference in this is that this isn't forcing people to get a driver's license. I think it's allowing people who are able to get one because they have these forms and can get one and drive legally. Like, I don't know of many people who are completely undocumented and needing sanctuary status that are gonna have all of these documents to be able to go get a license anyway.
They won't.
Am I understanding that incorrectly?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to give any changes to what we currently have. If you have to provide all of that information, to me, there's no place for these undocumented individuals to get a driver's license.
Hmm.
Hi, this is Deborah Mitchell.
Anyway,
Yeah, Deborah?
Yeah, my point was I was trying to make that they are petitioning for Natick to become a sanctuary town. So if they do receive sanctuary town status, I believe that would be inherent in the clause that undocumented immigrants would be able to have certain privileges, and that would probably be one of them. So I wasn't sure. I thought Catherine would probably know more since she's a selectman about this issue. Am I right, Catherine?
No, Deborah, we can't direct the state to issue a driver's license. It has absolutely nothing to do with one or the other. There's already a number of sanctuary cities and towns in Massachusetts. So it just provides them, it provides for special requirements that police, how police and the town interact with ICE. That's all it is.
Deborah, when you say they, is there an organized group? I know you put something in the
Yeah.
chat, but I haven't had a chance to
Yes.
look at it yet.
There is an organized group that has been talking this, they're looking for signatures. This Cody Jacobs
Mhm.
has met with Chief Hicks. There's a committee that's been formed to have this, I'm sure Catherine knows about it a little bit more.
Yeah, that sounds like it may well be an interesting topic for a separate Coffee with a Purpose
Okay.
session. Maybe I can reach out to Cody and Chief Hicks and others. And
Yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah,
I
Thank
think,
you.
yeah, I think it's something that merits a lengthier discussion than we can give it today.
yeah.
agreed.
All
I
right.
agree. Yeah.
Shall we move on to question 5, just so we get them all covered, and then we can circle back to the liquor licenses and the town warrant article relative to it? We can always circle back. Cindy, did you have?
Yeah, so based on what Laura's saying, that voting yes doesn't make that much of a difference, but it would allow a few more people who currently can't get a driver's license to get a driver's license.
Yeah,
So there's nothing, so I'm planning to vote yes.
yeah. Okay.
I will
Thank
say
you, Laura.
quick before we move on, I will say that there were some people that thought that this was especially good for women, because there are some instances with women needing protection from the law, domestic violence, that type of situation, and they've been unable to get protection because they're completely undocumented, and having a license would help them in those instances. I don't know how great of a population that is, or I just know that I've been hearing a lot of reports of that being another reason to vote for this.
Okay. Thank you. For question 5, which is specific to Natick, what I'm sharing right now is actually the back of the ballot, which maybe isn't the best description of what this is, but it says this is for CPA. So honestly, I just as soon have someone give a quick summary of what that would do for us, or if there's a different screen I should be showing, or that someone else wants to share that describes this better, feel free. Martin, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I can give the summary. I don't know what to put on the screen, but maybe we don't need anything.
Yeah.
So let me just update. Yeah, we obviously had a Coffee with a Purpose, a whole session devoted to this in spring when it was on the town meeting warrant, and we talked in great detail. But we can go through what the CPA does and so forth. I just wanted to update people quickly on where we are with spreading the word, because as with a lot of things in town, we think everybody knows, but probably 90% of the people haven't even paid attention to it yet. So thank you to all the people at Coffee with a Purpose. And after our last session, we got a lot of fundraising response from this group, some very generous. And finally, we reached our fundraising goal. It was a bit of a challenge because we didn't really fully appreciate that putting this on a state election ballot means that 75% of the people are going to be voting, as opposed to on a town ballot when 25% of the people were voting, which means we basically had to blanket the entire town. We couldn't just be selective. So that's why we desperately needed some money at the last minute. We did get the signs out a week or so ago, about 120 signs, but we could still use some more, some of the major streets. We got a lot of small streets, but anybody can reach me later about a major street if you know that. So we also decided we couldn't afford to do, we did a brochure. This is the brochure we handed out at Native Day. It was two-sided. It had a lot of information. We couldn't afford to send that out to everybody, but we came out with a large size postcard, which I think looks pretty good. We are printing 15,000 copies. Cindy has joined our core group, and she was out there Friday packing up the first 10,000 and getting those to the post office, and then she's going to do the next 5,000 today and get those to the post office. So hopefully everybody will have it by the end of the week, and gives all the basic information. You want me to go through like what it does in like a nutshell, even though I think a lot of people know?
We don't necessarily need to take time, particularly if it's a super pro CPA audience at the moment, or it might not be completely. I
see a couple of names I don't recognize. I can give a one-line summary because I've learned how to do the elevator speech.
Yeah, I want to definitely allow time for anybody that maybe might not be in favor of this to indicate or state why. And I also just want to point out that Brinley had put into the chat the link for the web page for this, which includes a link to the flyer that you just talked about, Martin. So why don't you be real brief on it, Martin, and then let me just if anybody wants to offer a contrasting view, I'd really like to be able to do that.
Yeah, so basically the state has provided this opportunity for cities and towns to opt into the Community Preservation Act, started about 20 years ago. The majority of cities and towns have done so. Massachusetts rejected it back in 2006, and many of us felt it was time to try again, and it's having, I think, a lot more success.
Natick rejected it, not Massachusetts.
Natick.
Natick, I'm sorry, yeah. So basically, if we opt into the CPA, we can, there can be a surtax on our income tax, with a number of exemptions for low income people, which we can get into, but for most households, it would be a 1% surtax. And that would average about $67 a household. And that money is going to be controlled by a local committee, which can use it for 4 different purposes based on the needs of the town. And then the committee will recommend expenditures to town meeting, which approves them all. So it can be used for open space, which is, of course, my big thing. Outdoor recreation, which kind of merges into open space. For example, trail work. There's a lot of projects that have been in the works that we just need to raise a modest amount of money for. Historic preservation, and then affordable housing. And I guess that's basically it in a nutshell. We can go into any more details or questions that people have.
Thank you for that.
Just to be clear, it's a surcharge on property taxes. I think Martin misspoke.
I could have.
You said income tax.
And the coffee, gosh. Martin.
yeah, I don't know. I need the coffee.
Martin, it was estimated how much money has been left on the table since the town turned it down.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember, but a lot. Yeah, you mean how many projects we would have had? A lot, yeah.
Millions of dollars.
You can kind of guess. So we're estimating that we're going to get $1.4 million a year based on the surtaxes and the state matching funds, if that stays with the average level they've been. So in 20 years, if it was 1.4 million times 20 years, you can figure it out. But my math, I can't even remember anything. So somebody's going to do the math. But that's basically how much we could have been doing all along. basically.
Also, Martin, to put it another way, would we be looking at an $8.5 million deficit in 4 years, a structural deficit, if we had not had to use the tax levy for capital improvements, buying open space, historic preservation, maintaining trails, things like that? So there's two ways of looking at it. One is all the money we could have had and what we've missed out on. And then the other way of looking at it is we have a structural deficit that is portending an override, which we may not have to, we may not have had to have if we were able to use our tax levy for basic government services and the CPA for all of the things that enrich our lives.
But I think a third way of looking at it is some of those things that the CPA covers are things that are easy to leave off the bottom of the list when funds are tight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so some combination of that. Yeah, I was thinking of that because the Pig Hill purchase, we did it through borrowing. The rail trail, which turned out to be way more expensive than we had anticipated, $6 million. We did with half with borrowing and half with the mitigation funds. And the Eastern Navy Yard fields, which is like $4 million, we did with borrowing. So we could have, avoided some of that borrowing and still done a lot of new projects that we didn't have the money for.
Yeah. So I guess I'd like to just not circle back, but ask again. Is there anybody here that would like to offer a contrasting view or speak to any of issues or difficulties that passing this might raise?
I guess I will say that I am absolutely in favor of this. I was on the committee that recommended it 15 years ago. I was for it then, I'm for it now, but there are definitely folks out there in town who are seeing this just kind of reflexively as, what, a new tax? No way. That seems to be the main argument, not that the projects might be worthwhile, but they're not worthwhile enough to justify a new tax. At least that's what I'm hearing in the, out in the community.
Rick, you've got your hand up.
I just wondered if Sarah knew whether the opposition is organized this time as they were 15 years ago or whatever it was in 2008 when it was defeated.
No.
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
No, there's we've been doing a social media campaign. I think we're in our third 3.5 weeks or something, and there's a lot of people, or there's a few people who are very vocal and very, very against, but there's no organization.
Okay. Tom?
And it's all about taxes. Like, no more taxes. My taxes are going up.
Yep.
Everything's going up. Like, they're just angry.
They're angry and they don't see a reason for spending on anything but kind of the bare minimum. Why
exactly.
do we need
They're
anything?
Small government people. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tom, you had your hand up? You're still on mute. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. I'll start off. I am totally in favor of this. However, I see that there'll be additional administrative costs, taking the surtax, putting it into the CPA fund. Does anybody have an estimate of what additional administrative costs will be incurred making this happen?
We had researched that. I don't remember. Cindy, or do you remember? It was a way back when we presented this to the finance committee and select board back in the spring. We figured that they'd be concerned about that, and we also talked to the town administrator. We did get a sense of that, but I honestly don't remember. I think it was like a fraction of a staff person, not a whole staff person, and there can be administrative expenses to some extent. I think it's 5% of the
5% of the spending.
So basically, the administrative costs could be offset from the CPA itself. It's too bad we don't like to use money for administration, but it wouldn't cost it wouldn't come out of the normal budget.
Thank you.
Okay.
For that.
Thank you.
So I guess what I'd like to do now then, unless there's other questions about this, is circle back to topic of alcohol licensing, but rather than being question 3, the warrant article. I'm sorry, Laura, did you want to say something? No. Okay.
Me, Laura?
Yeah. No, I
No.
just, is the
No,
screen had switched to you, so
that's okay.
Yep, that's fine. Okay, so let me share one more screen if I can find it. Here we go. This is Article 18 of the town fall meeting warrant related to seating capacities for for places that are selling what?
Rest-
Can
for
I expand it?
restaurants.
Just make it bigger.
Yeah. All right, so Martin, you were suggesting that we invite Catherine to
Yeah.
explain
Click
this
on
to
the
us.
little zoom button at the bottom, with the magnifier, so we can see it better.
There we go.
There we
All
go.
right. Is that a little bit better?
Quickly. So going back, I don't know what year it was, the select board decided to put a home rule petition before the general legislature restricting the amount of seating for licenses. If you want an all alcohol license in your restaurant, you need 100 seats. If you wanted a malt one, I think it's 15 wine and malt beverages. And so even though the state gives the select board all authority over all licenses and however we want to structure them, previous select boards wanted it to be a home rule petition so that if anybody ever wanted to undo it, any other future board wanted to undo those seating, they'd have to put it before town meeting. So that's where we are today. The reason I mentioned three things. One is I've met with Natick 180. They have some very real concerns about increasing the outlets for alcohol in town. I explained that research that was done on outlets, in other words, the number of outlets that are available for a person to purchase alcohol has a correlation with the rise in substance use disorder. The problem with that research at this period of time is that we have 56,000 outlets in Natick now, in the sense that you can get online to Instacart and get from Wegmans or Total Wine a delivery within 2 hours of a handle of vodka. So people who are alcoholics or who suffer from substance use disorder they're not going into restaurants and spending $10 to $12 on a glass of wine or $12 on a cocktail. I mean, they may be doing that, but that's not where they're getting their alcohol. It's getting anonymous delivery at home and from package stores. And so Natick has 12 or 13 licenses for restaurants, but we are not attractive to the restaurant industry or to small restaurants because we have 100 seat minimum and we don't have spaces in town that have 100 seats. So we have these unused alcohol or restaurant licenses, which would bring in local use taxes. And we have kind of an equity issue too. So for example, Eli's is smaller than Zaftig's. Zaftig's has a full bar and can start serving at 10 o'clock, mimosas on the weekend or Bloody Marys, but Eli's can't until 11 o'clock and they can only serve their Bloody Marys with sake because that's brewed. So there are all these strong, and there are small restaurants that would like to order, for example, there's a Mexican restaurant in town. I talked to the owner and he goes, I just want to order margaritas. I want people to be able to order margaritas, that's all. He said, I'm too small to have a full bar. I'm not going to do that. The amount of money it would take to stock a full bar and to buy alcohol at competitive rates, he doesn't have the room for it. And that's cash and inventory sitting there. So, and then the last thing I'll say is about the public health issue. So with regard to the idea of outlets, I already mentioned we've got 56,000 addresses in town at which business and home, you can get a delivery within 2 hours. So the outlet issue isn't really a viable way of looking at it. And the second thing is we had a data scientist talk to us about research she had done on a different project where she looked at a county by county assessment of the correlation between substance use disorder and restaurants and substance use disorder and package stores. When you control for socioeconomic factors, so education and income, when you control for those two factors, there's no correlation, let alone causation, between the number of restaurants in a county and the reported substance use disorder, but there is with package stores. So my position on this is let's get some restaurants in town that are going to generate local use taxes. Let's be more attractive from the business side, take some of those extra fees and put them into Natick 180 and other organizations or the health department in the schools for alcohol use education. And then also, we have been given, because of the census, another package store license. I personally, and so I've talked to Mike Hickey, and I think my other colleagues in informal conversations on the board said, let's not award it. We don't need another package store. We've got, if you, no matter where you are in Natick, you can get alcohol from a package store. The question is, can we bring more restaurants in by removing the seat requirement? The proposed policy has very high, has a schedule of fines. It has a lot of control mechanisms requiring that restaurants have cameras in all areas that they're serving and that they have to keep that tape. So we have a lot of built in. We've worked with the police department. We've worked with restaurants to say, okay, we're going to give you the possibility of having this privilege, but it is a privilege. It's not a right. And we're going to build in enforcement mechanisms so that this doesn't become a problem. That was my very rushed 5-minute presentation on that.
That's a really good overview. Thank you. Does anybody have questions or other comments they want to make about this? Seems to make a lot of sense. Cindy's applauding. At least I think that was, or were you raising your hand, Cindy?
I'm also putting my phone number in the chat for anybody who wants to talk about this offline, because I know you guys are getting to the end of your meeting. I'm happy to take calls and call people back and send them my research and things like that.
Oh, thank you for that.
Hello.
Yeah, Martin.
I'll jump in with a question because I have trouble with numbers, as you can tell today. So the seating requirement was 100 seats, I think, originally. I remember town meeting lowered it to 50. I don't remember if that was wine and beer and all alcohol. I'm really fuzzy on the sequence, and I'm also, what is the seating requirement that you're looking towards now?
No seating requirement.
No seating requirements. Okay.
And that doesn't mean that there's going to be a bar. So a bar is defined as a tavern under Chapter 138, Section 1. And so a tavern means you have a place where people can drink, but there's no food served and there's no seating whatsoever. What we're trying to do is allow for some of the newer uses of like restaurant space where you might have a bar, but you've got tables, and we don't want to restrict based on the configuration of space because we don't have a lot of large venues. Every single license application is reviewed by the select board, and the select board has the right under state law to start with what's called a public need test. So let's say a restaurant concept comes before that, and they're like, we're not going to have any seats, we're going to have all standing up eating, and it'll be like a little cocktail party. We can say there's no public need for that and reject it, and that's upheld by the ABCC because that's the only criteria that needs to be met. So it isn't going to be carte blanche. It's not going to be crazy. I've heard in the course of doing this research stories, a lot of mythology about Natick from 1933 until the early 50s, about shootouts and things. So I actually went back one night when I had insomnia. I went to the Morris Library website, pulled up the Natick Bulletin and tab from December 5th, 1933, when Prohibition was ended, and went to December 31st, 1949. And I just searched for crime, alcohol, ale, beer, wine, liquor, homicides. There were 3 homicides in that period, 2 in Wellesley, 1 in Framingham. Alcohol does not appear to be connected, or it's not in that article. I'm not saying that there wasn't alcohol abuse and the bars weren't crazy and that people, men didn't go out drinking, come home and beat their wives or anything like that. But a lot of the mythology about early Natick post Prohibition just doesn't show up in our tab. And believe me, they covered everything, every engagement, every vacation, every hospital visit. So-and-so broke their leg. I mean, there was a lot, it was a lot to get through. But what I did find were numerous ads from Fannon's and Austin Liquors in the section where people talked about, weddings and engagements and things like that. So there was a lot of alcohol policy. A lot of alcohol sales. And then almost every year that I could find in November elections, our local towns that all bordered us rejected alcohol sales. So we were the only place, but I don't see this bill turning us into the Wild West. I really don't. especially when Natick, I mean, when Wellesley has so many lovely restaurants right next door. So does Framingham. Sherborne doesn't have anything to our south. But I'd like to see those local option taxes coming back into our town.
I think you raise a good point, Catherine, about the local town, the nearby towns. I grew up in Newton and we bordered Wellesley and Weston, and there were giant package stores on both borders with those towns. I went to college at Wellesley College. Lilja's package store made deliveries. They were the Amazon of the world in terms of alcohol before there was such a thing. So I think, this issue of it's not just Natick, and it was interesting to hear you say there were 2 homicides in Wellesley and there weren't any in Natick. So, I think that is a piece of this.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's also great to hear that so much thought has gone into, why this makes sense for us.
So in summary, are we voting yes?
It sounds like there's a lot of persuasive arguments in favor of it.
Yeah.
Anybody
Good.
offering contrasting opinion?
Good help. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, good. So does anybody want to circle back to any of the 5 ballot questions? We are after 10 o'clock anyway, but we can circle back to that, or we can pretty much sum up. At the moment, I do not have speakers signed in yet. In just a second, for the next 2 weeks. I did have a question. So we've got the election coming up on the 8th. Clearly a super important election. We've talked about the ballot questions. We could have a similar session talking about the elected positions, but I am guessing that people are mostly going to just vote a Democratic or a Republican ticket, depending on how they feel about things, so that there wouldn't necessarily be a whole lot of fruitful discussion. People feel differently about that. We could talk about, I kind of get the sense that we'd be mostly preaching to the choir about why we should vote for a particular candidate or not.
We could talk about the Amore, I forget what race that is, treasurer.
Yeah.
I think I'm planning to vote for him. He's a Republican.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm leaning toward him as well, as much as anything, because I
Yeah.
do like the idea of there being some, not 100% one party or the other. And he seems like the rare breed, a reasonable Republican that's not a conspiracy theorist. And I apologize if I've offended anybody by saying that, but anyway.
What position was that? I missed it.
Treasurer.
Thank you.
I was also interested in knowing if anybody wanted to have that conversation about auditor, actually. I think that's an interesting race as well in terms of.
Okay, well, we could certainly at least do part of a session on those 2 races, or honestly, anyone. It's great. I'm glad I asked the question. It sounds like there might be some good
People will have to
discussion.
come in with information because I have none myself.
Yeah, well, why don't we plan on that for next Monday? That would be the 24th. And I'll put out, that in the email reminder. For folks not reading the chat, I also wanted to just call out something that Deb has brought to our attention. Request to pray for Ms. Jean McGuire, past director of Metco and the first Black woman on the Boston School Committee, who was stabbed in Boston while walking her dog on October 11th. She thankfully is expected to survive, but honestly, 91 years old. I remember reading about that in the paper.
Yeah.
So, yeah, prayers for her.
What a world.
Yeah. All right, so we will we've got that tentative plan for the 24th. I may come up with a speaker for the 31st, that being Halloween. We could also just share our favorite Halloween stories from our lives. We don't always have to be talking about super important issues of the day. But we do have a couple interesting speakers coming up in November so far, so more to come on them as well.
We could come in costume too.
There you
That's
go.
true. You know, I was almost gonna suggest that. Why not? You know? Costume, are they only costumes from the neck up, Tom? We never seem to.
Yeah,
see the rest
yeah.
of each other.
Yeah,
Neck up.
Yeah.
just bring a weird mask.
Right.
Mhm.
All right. Well, we'll uncharacteristically finishing before 10:30 here.